talking about the Ravens needing to make moves here. They made the coaching decisions. It's coming in hot, but free agency period is coming faster than you can think. And of that, we have to think about what the Ravens need to do to right some wrongs here. The trenches were a disgrace in 2025 as opposed to what many considered it to be. Of course, we know the guard position in the offensive line was a concern, but the lack of pass rush severely hampered this defensive unit, especially with a defensive backfield that we thought would shine bright. Didn't do so primarily, in my opinion, because they didn't have any consistent pass rushing help. Now, there's a little bit of a talking point with Jay Glazer of Fox Sports going on Yahoo Sports today in Radio Row as we get ready for the Super Bowl, speaking about Maxx Crosby, Raiders defensive end, maybe Ravens defensive end.
You're trying to get there early. You're trying to speak something into existence. Yeah.
Well, the Raiders defensive end is not very happy. He got shut down a little bit early as we assumed the Raiders were trying to, help themselves in the draft pecking order. But Maxx Crosby doesn't want to deal with another rebuild mode for this Raiders team. And there's conversation that this may be his last year in a Raiders uniform, which begs the question, where will he go next? And know a lot of Ravens fans have been clamoring for Maxx Crosby as early as 2024. So having him available, assumably, we don't know what the Raiders are thinking, but we know what Maxx Crosby is thinking per Jay Glazer. Q, how would you feel if the Ravens were to fix that pass rushing issue with a bit of Maxx Crosby wearing purple and black?
This is so funny because large man who eats cheese, I appreciate some of his comments. He's saying first round pick and trade isn't a thing for EDC if we ain't getting another first ourselves. If it is about recognizing he has to step up, I think part of stepping up would be making a splash in that free agent realm, the likes of a Maxx Crosby, the likes of a Trey Hendrickson, the likes of, hey, look, from a receiver aspect of things, George Pickens. Okay, who's out there offensive line wise that is just like next level? We need a huge, we are serious splash. Now, from a trade aspect of things, how do you put your board together? And when you see you have, I don't know the board yet because they meaning all these scouts and all the different teams. I mean, they're still in, 2026 mode, or 2025 mode, although 2026 and the Senior Bowl and all the things have happened. My point is that once they get the board together and say, look, this year's draft is a heavy line draft, a heavy corner draft, a heavy whatever, that's where I think the Ravens need to make it happen as far as like, all right, cool. If we do trade for a Maxx Crosby, we know we can still meet the needs that we look at of playing ready now players, not developmental players that may or may not develop. We want now ready players. So I think it can happen. Obviously, again, Lamar Jackson negotiations, but that's where EDC better go ahead and work his magic and do what he needs to do. So ultimately, man, I would absolutely love them to be aggressive and trade for Maxx Crosby or make a big splash and get the services of Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's time for a splash. And again, I definitely am of the mindset of like with trading firsts, I'll believe it when I see it because we just, that's been something that DeCosta hasn't been willing to do. But I mean, if there is a time, it is now. And, if I'm DeCosta and you can tell up at those press conferences, he's feeling a little, maybe, I don't know if uncomfortable is the right word or antsy or tense or whatever. I mean, you can tell something's like, all right, it's go time. And DeCosta, I feel like, knows it. So if I'm DeCosta, I'm like, all right, well, if things go south and I don't make a move to really increase the chances of this team. And again, I think that he will make those moves, but just how big will those moves be? Like I'd be totally cool with a Trey Hendrickson. I'd be even more cool with Maxx Crosby. But again, the thing that DeCosta is weighing in these situations is not only how many draft picks it's going to take, but the contracts that Maxx Crosby is going to bring in / want. And all those are real conversations. But at the same time, it's like, hey, I'm not sparing any expense when it comes to trying to get Lamar Jackson the Super Bowl here, and there has to be some level of roster balance when it comes to having guys on rookie contracts that are really good and can give you $100 million production at a fraction of that price because they're playing on rookie deals. And then you got to kind of figure it out as you go. Also, how many picks? I mean, the Ravens have, I think, 11 picks again this year or something. It's double digits, I'm pretty sure. I'm going to say the same message I said last year. You don't need all those picks. You do not need all those picks. You trade some of those away. Make your capital work for you. And we saw 3 guys didn't make the roster this past year, 2 went on injured reserve, and 1 obviously got cut from their draft class. I don't think there's going to be room for double-digit rookies. So what do you do there? You don't waste the assets. You turn them into something that works for you. And whether that's trading up in the draft, trading them for players, established guys, whatever it may be, there has to be something that like something has to give here. And a lot of that's going to have to do with Lamar Jackson and the extension, hopefully, that he gets. Free agency is going to be really big, and that's going to be something that, a lot of people are talking about leading up to that, whether Linderbaum comes back and Likely and all those guys. But again, you got to work with those trenches. You got to make them better. And I think it starts with making a big splash, probably one on both sides of the ball. That doesn't mean bringing in like a top 10 player in the league at each position, but maybe one guy like that and then another decently big splash, because you got a lot of work to do on this roster. You have a good foundation, but you got to be able to round it out with some really talented guys to plug up those holes right now.
100%. You're absolutely correct. And I think that it'll be very interesting to see what the trade is going to be for. If he does, in fact, get traded, Jay Glazer made it seem as though the compensation will be more than what the Cowboys got from Micah Parsons, which I believe they gave up 2 first-rounders to get him. So, not the Cowboys. Yeah, the Cowboys gave up. No, the Packers gave up 2 first-rounders to get Micah Parsons. So, in that realm, let's say it takes 3 first-rounders to get Maxx Crosby. Would you rather the Ravens do that or sign a guy like a Trey Hendrickson? Kevin, I'll start with you. If you're okay, if the Ravens sign Trey Hendrickson, 3-year, $100 million contract, and then after that signing happens, you find out that another team traded 3 first-rounders for Maxx Crosby, would you be disappointed or would you be okay with the signing of Trey Hendrickson, knowing that 3 first-round picks away, you could have had Maxx Crosby in purple and black?
I mean, I'd be fine with it. I mean, I would prefer Crosby, but also I understand that 3 firsts is a very steep price to pay. But at the same time, it's like, you can't spare any expense. I would be okay with Hendrickson if the Ravens made a huge splash on a lineman. And if it was Crosby and not a lot of offensive line upgrades versus Hendrickson and a couple of really good offensive line upgrades, I'm going to probably choose Hendrickson and a couple of really good offensive line upgrades, because I think that gives you balance on both sides of the ball. It plugs up all the holes. Because again, Maxx Crosby can get 20 billion sacks on the season, and it's not going to matter if Lamar doesn't have time to throw and doesn't have time to do his thing, and the running lanes aren't being opened up. I mean, essentially, I'll put it to you this way. If it's Crosby and Falele and Voorhees versus Hendrickson and, I don't know, Batonio and a draft pick, give me that second option, and I'm not looking back.
I just think that you got to be so incredibly savvy if you're Eric DeCosta. And to Kevin's point, savviness doesn't mean just giving the farm away and you don't bolster up the offensive line for Maxx Crosby. I think the most that I would do would be maybe a first and a second, throw in a couple of those cops or other auxiliary picks that really, for you, don't mean anything, but for what would be for the Raiders would be, you guys are redoing your whole team. So go ahead, you need more picks. And I think that would be something that would interest me if I was Eric. But then, at the same time, like, make a strong splash in that bolstering up of the offensive line. So Hendrickson, Crosby, however it looks, but bolster up the offensive line without giving away the farm.